Welcome to part two of how to tell a story, more specifically, how to tell a historical story, how to perform your story. So obviously, if you're listening to this video first, I would stop what you're doing, go back and listen to the first video, how to write your story. And then when you've done that, come back. Hello, nice to see you again. And these are the top 5 tips for how to perform the story that you've written. Tip number 1. Rehearse it. Never wing it. Never turn up with a story that you've written that you haven't rehearsed at home. Find an empty room and just read it out loud. Read it out loud. Get used to reading it out loud. Get used to the rhythms I was talking about. And you can write them, but sort of speaking and performing them is another thing. And just get used to saying it until you can almost remember it, but not quite. You don't have to remember it, but you know what the story is without having to think about it. Rehearse it. That's very important. When I used to do my one-man shows for Newark, during the school holidays, I would often take I'd have to learn it, but I wouldn't learn it word for word. I would rehearse it. I'd just read it through 7 times a day, over the course of a week, and then it would just be embedded in my brain. Whether you're memorizing it, half memorizing it, or reading it, do the same. Rehearse it, drill it, drill it. Now, point number 2, dress rehearse it. Now, what do I mean by that? Perform your piece in front of a special person. What do I mean by special person? I mean a friend. It could be a family member. It could be, a wife, a partner, mum, dad. I don't know who's listening to this. But basically, the point is, it's someone that you trust, someone that thinks you're good. That's very important. Someone who believes that you have talent and likes what you do, but is honest enough to say when something isn't working. So those 2 things are very important. And perform it in front of them. And the benefits of this are twofold. They'll give you good feedback, but also the hardest people to perform in front of are people you know. So once you've got over that hurdle, performing it publicly, whether it be out on the street in some form of tour context, in a poetry club, in a spoken word environment, on a stage, or in these locked down conditions on some kind of Zoom sort of event, it's not going to be as nerve-wracking. All right, so that's point number 2. Point number 3 is commit. Commit to your performance. The best way to look silly is to feel silly. Commit to being silly and you won't look silly. Commit to looking stupid and 9 times out of 10 you won't look stupid. I spend most of my professional life wandering around Newark dressed in ridiculous 17th century clothes, and the only way to not look a complete and utter numpty is to absolutely commit to it, embrace the ridiculousness of it, be loud, be big, and people go with it. 4, it's not cheating if you read from a book. Now, what am I talking about? I mean, we're talking mainly about stories that you're probably going to write and then read out in some context, or it could be a poem. But the point is, you can actually read it. That is allowed. You don't have to memorize it when you're performing it. In fact, I would rather people read something rather than half remember it and then crash and burn. And I have seen it happen. I've seen people paid to headline poetry sets who haven't properly learned their own work, and it is a little bit uncomfortable to watch. And the 5th and final point, and this is more to the adults, only kids listening, hopefully, is don't get drunk before you perform. Don't get drunk, don't do it. Performing is nerve-wracking, it really is. I don't care who you are, everyone is nervous before they get up to perform. And the temptation sometimes is just to maybe fortify yourself with a little bit of Dutch courage and have a drink to give you a little bit of confidence. This very seldom ends well. And I have seen many, many people crash and burn. And the worst people are the people who don't even realize they're doing it because they are absolutely pie-eyed and legless. Do not get drunk. That's perhaps the most important rule I can give you. So those are my top 10 tips for writing and performing. Oh, and there's a bonus tip as well. If you happen to have, lying around the house, a gifted musician brother who will score your work for you and won't ask for any money, get him to help you, which nicely sets up our performance. The piece that I sort of alluded to earlier about Geoffrey Hudson, the court dwarf of Queen Henrietta Maria. the wife of the King Charles I. Thank you for listening.